Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church weekly podcast. Conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hi, Ephrata Community Church. It's great to be with you. During Advent, Rachel was giving me a hard time the other day. She's like, we're singing Christmas songs. We should be singing Advent songs.
Yes, I understand.
So she was so excited during...
technicality, possibly.
I
Yes.
know, that's how I felt. And in this last worship service, she like bumps me whenever we do an Advent song. She goes, this is an anticipation song. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we had to be into this so much. I love them all. I have to say that. I can sing them all year round, but it's so great to be with you during Advent with expectation. We're going to chat about that in a bit. But one of the things we've promised to chat about for these weeks through the end of the year and maybe even to next year is a little bit about the use of words of knowledge in our community. It's so great to have Kevin here. And Kevin, I've noticed a recent pivot in the last few weeks where we're receiving words of knowledge, not just unto healing.
Yeah.
Emotional and physical, but even unto salvation. And it's been really, really wonderful.
Yeah. It's an interesting journey to follow the Lord and to do our best to respond and also then nurture those things that we begin seeing that come to the surface. And of course, we've been operating in words of knowledge for quite a long time and increasing words detail, increasing accuracy, even to the point where we want to begin measuring that to see what adjustments that we can make, just doing our best to know the ways of the Lord and how can we be most effective ministers of what He's given us. Mm-hmm. But it was, so we're very grateful for that increase. But it was actually the weekend that Randy Clark was here, which was the first weekend in November.
I remember it well.
And you were at Lifeway Church on Saturday night, and you felt specifically, okay, this is a different kind of word of knowledge where it wasn't necessarily for healing or encounter, but it was unto salvation.
That's right.
And you called out some very key things at that point that led to salvation. And when I saw that, or when you told a story about that, I felt like, wow, there's something that we need to begin to nurture. It's almost like God's given us a little bit of a clue, and you focus in on your attention, and you give it your attention, and you draw near, and pursue the Lord for more of that.
Can I decorate that with a little bit of the backstory? Kevin's referring to an experience I had where I arrived at the Harvest Net Summit. As oftentimes when you're one of the spiritual leaders of the community, you arrive looking to see how God wants to influence the people you're a part of stewarding. And of course, you're available yourself, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I just had two powerful moments of literally, I haven't been out in the Holy Spirit in a little while, but I was out twice that weekend, not even necessarily looking for it, just responded politely to something the Lord was doing in the room. And before you know it, I was on the floor. But both times before I went out, the first time someone prayed for me, they touched my hands and they said, you'll see souls this year, right? Mm-hmm. And you know how the Lord is when He speaks to you, He uses your construct. So for me, that's like something I've been praying about is evangelism right now in the post-Christian West. It's just something on my heart I always have before the Lord. And just to feel the Lord say you'll see souls this year, it just touched something in me.
Yes,
and
I'll
I just
take
remember,
that.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Second one had to do with healing. And I think when you have those moments, you're so full of faith in the community of faith that as I was driving, I had left and pretty much was racing to the Saturday night services at Lifeway. And I was somewhere in Campbelltown. Matter of fact, I know really almost the exact spot in Campbelltown. And I was talking with the Lord, and I began to say, Lord, what's it mean for souls, right? Yep. What's it mean for souls? And I felt the Lord clearly say, I'm going to release words tonight for people about their salvation. And all three of their services, while I was in worship, I received a very clear picture of where someone was at in their struggle of coming to the Lord. Called all three out, and I think Jimmy said somewhere between 10 and 15 people came to know Jesus. And
that's awesome.
And they use a very particular approach at the end where they actually call it out. And if you were here 2 weeks ago, Jimmy used a similar approach where he just says, hey, we're just stopping here to raise hands. Because we haven't done the raise hand stuff as often. Right. And man, just to see how many people responded. Matter of fact, one of the young men who came to know Jesus that time just wrote me this week with some questions about life. All that to say, I was so in agreement when we came back, and then you took hold of that as, hold a second, that resonates with something with me that
Yep.
another way God wants to release words of knowledge. And
Yep.
we have seen it consistently. I can attest that I think it was 2 weekends ago, word of knowledge was released, and someone responded to that to salvation.
Yep, exactly
just
right.
thrilled. Young man, it was great. Anyway.
Yeah, and same this past weekend, there was one of those as well, where one specific word of knowledge was, hey, you're trying to make plans for the future, but you're doing the planning. And so when you look into the future, you just see a black, I mean, literally what I saw in my mind's eye was a cinder block wall that had been painted black. And so that's how I communicated that was you're looking, but you're just seeing a black wall. You can't see into the future. And that's because you're planning without Jesus. Sure enough, Saturday night, someone responded.
That's right.
And that was their intention. Like,
That's right.
plan with Jesus and it'll all come in order.
Yeah,
yeah.
if we could continue there, I don't want to cut that off. But.
Well, even one other, I'll share one other specific word of knowledge. For us that are serving on ministry team, I think Sunday afternoon and Monday is a little bit of a debrief where you think back through and like, oh, I prayed for that and this, and almost trying to collect everything that occurred. But I love when words are, not that I should qualify words at all, but when they're unusual and they are specific.
Yep.
So one of those ones, I think it was from Saturday night, in which the word was that, hey, your marriage is doing okay as long as you stay busy.
That's right.
But when things slow down, you recognize that there's actually cracks in the foundation. Some things are just a little bit off. And so your answer to that is to stay busy.
Mm-hmm.
And the understanding was it was a generational pattern that many generations had occurred. And so I prayed for a couple that had been married for about a year. And they would say that that's not definitive, doesn't define like their own relationship, like they don't really feel that. But I think it was the husband's mother, like 2 days before, had said exactly this, almost word for word, what was spoken
almost
from the front.
Not bragging, but almost sharing like, hey, our marriage has made it because we just
keep busy. That's right.
That's right.
And so they just were struck by the fact that, wow, if this is a generational thing and this was just spoken, God speaking to us about something he wants to heal before it even takes root in our marriage.
Dude, that's beautiful.
Love
it.
It is.
Here,
so they're kind of up there kind of like, I'm not sure why we're here. Like, we don't have this issue, but I'm just responding to, a conversation that I heard 2 days ago.
Yeah.
That was neat.
No, and first of all, I'm just so thankful that the Lord's mindful toward us and meeting people like that. And I want to talk about one more thing that Kevin alluded to there. We're doing our very best as a community. I like to call it a quiet revival, meaning we're stewarding what the Lord's doing in our midst, and we're not doing a lot of trumpeting of it. If you tune into these podcasts, you just get to hear a little bit, not only what's going on, but behind the scenes. And one of the things behind the scenes is, Kevin's right, we are beginning to track the words of knowledge. So the service pastor at the end of every weekend goes into a particular digital format we have and types in every single one of the words of knowledge. And then our prayer teams, after they pray for people, if the people are willing to attach their name to it and let us share the testimony, they then go to another form and fill it out. So we have these two data sets, dare I use that word, of us being able to track what the Lord's releasing and what is being responded to, and then even to be able to track if a healing or if a momentous occasion took place in that. So we're able to begin to say, okay, what is the Lord doing in our midst? Is there anything consistent about it? Is there anything that we can do to continue to increase the accuracy in what God's doing here? So it is, I just want to attest to it's such a naturally supernatural way of following the Lord in this. And it's been really, really, I think, fruitful for us.
Right. Yeah. And it helps us to know, like, what can we do better or different? And Randy Clark would teach out of Exodus 33, where Moses says to the Lord, Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, show me your ways.
That's right.
And so it's motivated by, like, show me your way. Like, what are we doing that we can correct and course correct? Let me see, how can we collect data so we can see specifically how the Lord's working and actually amplify that? And so it's all based on, God, show me how.
That's right. And also, I'll just add this one little last thing on it. Where this also allows us to track which words weren't responded to and allow us to ask questions around that, right? Is that a word still in the future? How do we keep continuing to pray into that? Because we believe, remember here, if we believe that a word's been released, the faith is there to grab hold of to see that happen. It's one of the key things that makes us slightly different than what I would call a word of faith movement, which I think is more of a word of hope movement. When we actually believe that if a word's been released, the Lord has sat the faith out there and it's a legal document. I love your teaching on this, that it's something to be grabbed hold of. So what happens when no one's grabbing hold of that? Is there is that on us that the word was off, or is it, and if it is, let's try to do our best to be able to track that. And if not, how do we encourage people to step forward and to actually see this happen? I love that testimony last week. The woman whose shoulder was healed. She was healed as she was actually walking forward. So that, in other words, the faith is in the room. She's walking into it, right? And it doesn't take the prayer time at the end of it to make it happen. Anyway, any last thoughts on that before we talk a bit about this week?
Just that it's a fun and exciting adventure to follow the Lord. So I invite you to join in, man. Let's go for it.
And as you know, we like to keep the edges of this garden wild, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of stewarding.
Most of us are comfortable with that.
Yep, and we hope you are increasingly as well. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about this series. I found it great in this All Things New series. In other words, it's Rachel and I had a chance to share, Jimmy shared, you shared this weekend, and of course Christmas Eve tops it off. And then as we walk into the season of prayer and fasting, which we'll talk about at the end. But I just want to say that I found it so wonderful that you decided to grab the heart of this out of the book of Revelation after what God did this. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Why that passage versus everything you can do with Luke, right? There's 100 ways to approach this thing through Luke's. But,
well, one thing about that is, there's 100 ways to approach it, but I'm 30 years in ministry now.
I know, so you did them all already. Between Isaiah and Luke, you're like, okay, there's got to...
Because it's one of those things when it comes to the Christmas season and even Easter, like the story's there in the Bible, like you're always looking, the revelation is so significant. Like how do you almost like bring a twist to it to awaken people's hearts towards it? So it's a challenge, but it's based on the concept, understanding of Advent. That we have to recognize where we're going. And it's so hard for us to think what it would be like to live in a Old Testament mindset where all the promises of Jesus, the Messiah's coming, he's going to be born, he's of the line of David, like all those things. Right. But it's so far in advance. And what would it be between Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, and the time of Christ? 600 years, maybe, something like that. So you got to think like, man, they waited for what seemed like forever, and even back to Genesis 3:15. Some would say it's actually closer to 4,000 years that they waited, and we are not patient and wait. We're not good waiters, and just to posture before the Lord without giving up hope.
That's right.
So I wanted to almost recognize the tension that we have. Your story of like having a promise, but then feel like it lost, and then it's restored, and Jimmy, with those promises of clinging to that, that's
unmet expectations.
Unmet expectations, and how that can create significant offense. And even like for me this past weekend preparing, Abraham, if you would think about the statements, promises made, Abraham, your descendants will be as numerous as the stars. And that was a personal interaction with God. I mean, God, made the sacrifice himself. Like, what was that experience like? And he died with 8 children.
8 children.
And one child. And, it's kind of funny.
And only 2 at his graveside, right? Yeah. That's fascinating. The others had been sent off, right?
Exactly. And even going back to, God says, I'm going to make you a great nation. So then he has a child with his handmaiden, or Sarah's handmaiden. God has to come back and clarify. He says, no, actually what I meant was you and Sarah.
Yeah.
So, but man, to hang on to those things and recognize that to carry things by faith just so much honors God, whether we see it or not.
Yeah, and that's something that I tried to end with on my message too, was that there's a certain form of worship when you give God your faith and your trust that he's so worthy of, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that there's not struggle, there's not ambiguity, there's not confusion in the midst of that sometimes, but oh my word, when we can actually say like Job, okay, you could slay me, and I think I'm still going to trust you.
Oh my!
May it never come to that level.
Right.
But the reality is, it's worship, and I hope the Lord has been receiving this is worship. Matter of fact, I'm sure the Lord has. But just what a privilege it is to show trust to the Lord in the midst of these things, and that brings us to the All Things New. We decided to use the Book of Revelation, and partly because how many times the book of Revelation goes back to this lamb that was slain, right? The scene keeps going back to it. It keeps going back. So there is a certain kind of, in the midst of suffering, something powerful coming out the other side, right? In the midst of challenges and difficulties, something transformative happens on the other side. So for us to decide to launch off of, I am making all things new. Man, it's what I want to be a part of, and it sets us up perfectly as we're heading into the new year too. But I just want to say, thanks for the vision of what we're trying to do with that particular passage.
Yeah, and also going back, so it's a culmination of the year.
Yeah.
And so you look back over our shoulder and we see 2022, and I was stunned by what God did through the book of Revelation. even just in the reading of the book of Revelation. So people, fearful future, where's this all going? What's going to happen? Okay, now it's all in context in the hope of the person of Jesus Christ. And so going to Revelation 21:5, behold, I am making all things new, was a way of honoring what God has done this past year, which recognizing like this is as sure as Jesus being born in Bethlehem, exactly the way the prophet said it would happen. And in the same way, you can have that level of confidence of where this is going.
That's right.
God on the throne, I am making all things new.
That's right. And I think what I loved about this weekend was you highlighting, hold a second, we're not the only ones waiting. I mean,
that was an incredible thought.
That one opened up for me. I'm like, man, why? Of course I knew that, but yet you reawoken my imagination to the fact that even Jesus is allowing certain things to be an unmet hope and an expectation so as to encounter something even deeper and more beautiful, right? So that I'm sure the Lord would love to partake in resurrection life that he released in the way he did.
Yeah.
But he has actually said, hey, there is a certain aspect of this. I will wait till we're together to fully celebrate. You know, it's him welcoming us to a celebration. And man, that kind of buckles you down to be with it long term, right? To say, you know what, if the Lord's self is holding, you know, this is the sovereign Lord of the universe sitting at the right hand of God the Father. All these enemies are his footstool, and he goes, "Oh, but I'm still going to hold back on something.
Oh my goodness,
until we can have it together." Man,
that was something
it gives me staying power in the midst of it. Right?
So you think Jesus? Okay, he's past it. You know, he's got the keys of death and Hades. He's been resurrected. He's seated on the throne. You just go on, and then he says, "But I'm waiting for you. Like I'm holding off. Like I have a level of anticipation for the future with us." Yeah, I'm a little overwhelmed by that.
Me too. Now, again, back to my deep concern that we might be doing communion there at Wedding Supper of the Lamb, but just hopefully not casseroles. I just want to make sure I stated that yet again in my podcast
and we'll all
career.
be healed. We won't need gluten-free bread. So.
Hallelujah. Trust me. By the way, that was great to do communion together. But I want to jump looking forward here. You know, we have the Christmas Eve services come up, and then we're heading into the fast. We've released our 21-day prayer and fasting booklet. Anything you want to say to set us up?
Yeah, looking forward to what the team has put together for our Christmas Eve service is going to be a great celebration. It's going to be a congregational and community celebration. So we will watch some things come from the platform, but ultimately we are doing this together. Yeah. And I love what they've put together. It's going to be a great time to celebrate the Lord. Of course, heading into the following week, which if you tune into the podcast regularly, you'll be getting some things electronically about the Jesus rallies with more specifics, and even when it comes to the season of prayer and fasting. Looking forward to the Jesus rallies the following week and some evangelistic training with that. And then stepping into our season of prayer and fasting. And again, it's not just simply about those 3 weeks, but I feel like those 3 weeks are actually setting the tone for the entire year. Christ formed in us. And then Christ represented by us to the world around us. That's exactly right. If we can just get that done in 2023,
oh goodness,
I'm retiring.
You know, I love that. I love that the booklet has a fingerprint on it. Yep. And as many of us know, there's a word of knowledge released over our community that I will put my name upon you. And that is what I'm praying
into.
The
identity.
Like, you give me that identity, all the sub-identities get rightly ordered.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to it. Well, thanks for your stewardship in that. Hey, Christmas Eve services, 23rd, 24th at 5 and 7. No sign-up needed this year. There's going to be room for everyone. We asked you to invite a friend. It is going to be one of those services that no matter what a friend's or a neighbor's background is, they're going to be able to find some resonance with what's going on. So don't hesitate to invite some friends to what's going on and get ready to eat 900 dozen cookies.
Well, I'm eating a bunch of those, so
you're here.
They'll be gone before you get.
Yeah, we hope you have a great week leading up to Christmas Eve. We hope to see you here.
Yep, bless you.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening and that you'll join us again next week. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us by visiting EphphatACommunityChurch.com.